Hello and welcome. So, today we're going to talk about a really simple but honestly super powerful idea: how you can take a whole mess of numbers and turn them into a story that actually makes sense. You know that feeling, right? Like you're just drowning in information, but you're not really sure what any of it means? It happens to all of us at work, even in our personal lives. It's just so much noise, like trying to listen to 1,000 conversations at once. It's overwhelming.
I mean, just think about a typical retail business. They're tracking every single click on their website, every item you put in your cart, every comment on social media. It's just this constant, nonstop flood of information coming at them from all sides. But what if? What if you could cut through all that noise and find the actual meaning? Well, that's exactly what we're going to cover. By the end of this, you'll see how to take all that chaos and turn it into clarity by, you guessed it, telling a story with your data. Okay, so this leads us to a really important point. Just having more data doesn't mean you have more answers. More isn't always better. You see, for most organizations, collecting the data, that's the easy part. The real challenge is actually using it to make a positive change. So many businesses are sitting on this mountain of information, but they just can't figure out how to make it useful. And that, of course, makes it really hard to make smart decisions. And this quote right here, it just nails it. Without the story, it is difficult to understand what the data is trying to tell you. Think about it. Numbers are just numbers. They're abstract. They don't have a voice until you give them one with a story. Otherwise, they're just silent. So, okay, if the problem is that the data has no meaning, then the solution is pretty simple, right? We have to give it meaning. And that is exactly where the power of storytelling comes into play. So what is data storytelling? Really, it's just the key to unlocking your data. It's about turning all those numbers into a narrative, a story, that helps business leaders actually take action. It's not just about the what, it's about finding the why behind it all. That story gives the context leaders need to see the big picture and figure out what to do next. Yeah, a good data story completely changes the game. It takes a boring old spreadsheet and turns it into a real tool for understanding. And when decision makers understand something, they trust it. That trust is what leads to confident, smart business decisions. Okay, that all sounds great, but what does this actually look like in the real world? How do these stories actually drive action? Let's get into it. All right, let's go back to that retail business we were talking about. Once they start telling stories with their data, wow, they can do so much. They can track inventory, for sure, but they can also identify why people are buying certain things, spot new trends before they blow up, and even recommend other stuff their customers might love. They can figure out the perfect price for an item, and even spot and shut down fraud. See, each of those is its own little story that leads to a really smart action. And here it is. This is what it looks like. This is the transformation. You go from that complete chaos of raw information to a clean, clear dashboard. Suddenly, you've got charts and graphs that tell you something important at a single glance. That is what a data story looks like. It's clarity. And this is why it is so important. The faster a business can understand what's going on, the faster they can make those precise decisions, the more competitive they're going to be. It's that simple. Speed and clarity give you a massive edge. All right, so where do you even begin with all this? Your journey starts right now. And honestly, the most important part is just taking that very first step. Just getting this one idea in your head that data needs a story to have meaning, that's it. That's the first step on your own data journey. It completely changes how you look at all the information that's constantly flying around you. So, what are your next steps? Well, first, you could partner up with the data experts in your organization. They can help you get what you need. Second, make sure your story gets to the right people, the ones who can actually do something with it. And finally, you got to make sure people can easily find and discover the story, so it becomes part of how things get done. So, I'll leave you with this one question to think about. In your own life, in your own work, what story is the data all around you just waiting to tell?
Hello and welcome. Have you ever found yourself just staring at a page full of numbers, feeling completely lost? Well, today we're going to fix that. We're going to walk through, step by step, how to take a confusing jumble of data and turn it into a simple story that actually makes sense.
Yeah, does this look familiar? We're all kind of swimming in information these days, right? Charts, graphs, numbers, it can feel pretty overwhelming. It's like having all the pieces of a puzzle, but with no picture on the box to guide you. But stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll have a really simple, powerful way to put all those pieces together and see the big picture.
So, where do we even begin? Well, every good story has a first chapter. And in the world of data, that first chapter is all about one thing: understanding what happened. I want you to think of yourself as a detective, arriving at a crime scene. Your first job isn't to solve the whole case right away. Nope, it's just to gather the facts. Before you can solve any mystery, you have to survey the scene, right? You just need to figure out the basic facts. It's the exact same thing with data. We're not looking for reasons or trying to predict the future. Not yet. We are simply asking, what happened? This is the foundation for everything else we're going to do. Now, the tool we use for this first step has a name. It's called descriptive analytics. And it's just what it sounds like. It's all about describing what has already happened. We look back at past data to get a clear, simple summary of the past. It's like writing the who, what, where of our story. For example, let's imagine a retail store. At the end of the year, they can use descriptive analytics to look at all their sales reports and say, okay, our blue widgets sold like crazy, but the green ones, not so much. See, it's a simple, factual statement, but it's the crucial first clue in our investigation.
Okay, so now we know what happened. The plot is thickening. Knowing that the blue widgets were best sellers is great information, but the real magic happens when we start to figure out why. This is the moment we go from just being a reporter of facts to a true data detective.
So, we know the blue widgets were flying off the shelves. But was that just a random lucky break? Or was there a very specific reason for it? This is what separates a surface-level glance at the numbers from a deep, really useful insight. So for this, our next tool in the detective kit is diagnostic analytics. This is where we put on our Sherlock Holmes hat and start looking for clues that connect the dots. It's all about digging in to find the root cause, the why behind the what.
So, how do we actually do that? Well, it's a pretty straightforward three-step process. First, we spot something unusual in the data. An unexpected spike in sales or a sudden drop. Then, we start gathering more data that's related to that change. Did we run a special promotion? Was there a big event happening? And finally, we look for patterns that can explain what happened. It's just like finding the motive in a mystery. Let's go back to our store. They see this huge spike in sales for blue widgets back in October. So they use diagnostic analytics, they collect a bit more data, and then, aha! That's when we launch that big social media campaign. Boom! Now they have a clear connection between their marketing and their sales.
All right, so we've cracked the case of the October sales spike. We know what happened and why. Now it's time to look to the future. This is where data analysis stops being a rearview mirror and starts becoming more like a crystal ball, helping us see what's coming next so we can make a plan.
I mean, this is the million-dollar question for any business, isn't it? We know our social media campaign was a huge success, but can we make that magic happen again? This is where we shift from just analyzing the past to actually trying to forecast the future. And the tool we use for this part is called predictive analysis. You can think of it like having a weather forecast for your business. We're using all that great historical data and the trends we've already found to make a really educated guess about what's just over the horizon. So our retail store can now look at the success of their campaign and predict that, hey, if they run a similar one next year, they can probably expect another big surge in sales for blue widgets. And that's super useful because it helps them plan ahead and make sure they have enough in stock. But look, a forecast is only useful if you actually do something with it. Knowing it's going to rain is one thing. Remembering to bring an umbrella is what really matters. This brings us to our final and honestly most important step, turning what we know into what we do. This is where prescriptive analytics comes in. It's the last piece of the puzzle. It doesn't just tell you what's probably going to happen, it actually recommends what you should do about it. It's like having a trusted advisor giving you a data-backed to-do list for success. So here's the key difference, nice and simple. Predictive analytics is the weather forecast. It tells you there's a 90% chance of rain tomorrow. Prescriptive analytics is your mom telling you, don't forget to take your umbrella. One gives you the information, the other tells you what to do with it. One's the forecast, the other's the plan.
So there you have it. When you put all of these pieces together, you create this incredible, powerful system for making smart, confident decisions. It's really a journey, one that takes you from total confusion to complete clarity, from just guessing to actually knowing.
And in today's world, we have a pretty amazing sidekick for this journey: artificial intelligence. You can think of AI as our superpowered detective's assistant. It can sift through mountains of data way faster than we ever could, finding hidden patterns and insights we might have missed. It's a total game changer.
And just like that, we've come full circle. Remember that chaotic mess of data we started with? By following this simple framework, we've turned it into something clear, something organized, something that gives us actionable insights we can actually use.
That, in a nutshell, is the story of data. It's a journey from what happened, to why it happened, to what's going to happen next, and finally, what should we do about it? And it's a journey that empowers all of us to stop guessing and start making decisions with real confidence.
So, I'll leave you with this one question to think about. What's one area in your own life, maybe it's your work, maybe your health, or even a hobby, where a little data detective work could make a huge difference? The power to find those answers is right there, in your hands. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hello and welcome. If you've ever dipped a toe into the world of data, you've probably noticed something. It can get a little confusing with all the different job titles flying around. So today, we're going to clear all of that up.
Yeah, take a look at this. You've got your business analyst, your data analyst, data engineer, analytics engineer, data scientist. I mean, wow, it's a lot, right? It's totally understandable why it's so tough to figure out who does what. But don't worry, we're going to break it all down.
So this is the big question, isn't it? Business analyst, data analyst, analytics engineer. What's the actual difference? I mean, they all sound pretty much the same, but you'll see the roles are actually very, very different. And the best way to understand it is to follow the data itself. We're going to go on a little journey from the moment data is born all the way to when it becomes this powerful insight that a company can use. And by the end, I promise you'll see exactly where each person fits into the puzzle. Ready? Let's get into it. All right, so every story has a beginning. And in the world of data, that beginning is all about getting the raw materials. That's where the data engineer comes in. Okay, so what is a data engineer? Well, think of them like the master architects and plumbers of the data world. Seriously, they're the ones who build and manage all the systems, the pipes really, that collect and move data from tons of different places. We're talking data of all shapes and sizes. Their job is to get it all flowing to one central spot, safely and reliably. So what does that mean they're actually doing all day? Well, they're setting up all the heavy-duty tech, whether that's in the cloud or on a company's own servers. They're making sure that flow of data is secure and managed properly. And they use this process you'll hear about a lot called ETL. It stands for extract, transform, and load. Basically, they pull data from one place, change it into a format that's actually usable, and then load it into a new home. The key thing to remember is this: they build the entire foundation. Without them, nobody else has any data to work with. Okay, so now we have all this raw data thanks to our data engineer. But here's the thing. It's not quite ready to be used yet. It's kind of like having a huge truck deliver a mountain of fresh ingredients to your kitchen. You've got the stuff, but you can't cook with it just yet. That's where the analytics engineer steps in to make it all usable. The analytics engineer is a super important role that sits right in between the hardcore engineering and the analysis part. They're the bridge. They take those raw data pipelines and start to clean, shape, and model the data. They're obsessed with data quality and testing, making sure everything is reliable and, this is key, easy for other people in the company to just pick up and use. They basically create the golden, trusted sources of data that everyone else relies on. This really spells it out, doesn't it? On one side, you have the data engineer. Their main job is building the highways, just getting the data from point A to point B. But the analytics engineer, they're focused on what happens once the data arrives at point B. They're the ones who turn that raw stuff into a clean, organized, and ready-to-use product for the rest of the business. All right, our data is collected, it's clean, it's modeled. Now what? Well, now it's time to actually find out what story this data is trying to tell us. And for that, we bring in the analysts. So the data analyst, think of them as the storytellers. They're the ones who take all of that beautifully prepared data and translate it into a language that everyone can understand. How do they do that? By using visualization tools to create charts, graphs, and dashboards that make the hidden insights in the numbers just pop right out. So a typical day for a data analyst might involve some final data cleaning and prep for whatever project they're on. Then they'll spend time designing the models that will power their analysis. And then comes the fun part, actually building the reports and dashboards in tools like Power BI that people will interact with. And a huge part of their job is talking to people around the company to make absolutely sure the reports they're building are answering the right business questions. Okay, wait a second. If the data analyst builds the report, what does a business analyst do? Great question. The business analyst is all about interpretation. They're the experts at looking at those charts and dashboards and connecting the dots back to what it means for the business and what the business should do next.
And this slide just nails the difference. The data analyst's job is to show you what happened. They build the chart that says, hey, sales went down by 10% last quarter. But the business analyst's job is to tell you these so what. They look at that same chart and say, okay, sales are down 10%, so what do we do about it? Here's why it happened, and here's our plan. See the difference? It's huge.
Okay, everything we've talked about so far has been about understanding what's happened in the past. But what if we want to predict the future? Well, for that, we need a data scientist.
So data scientists are the fortune tellers of the data team, but, with math and code. They use really advanced techniques to build predictive models. They're looking for complex patterns that no one else can see, running experiments and trying to answer the really tough, forward-looking questions.
And when we say advanced analytics, it covers a whole spectrum of things. It can be as simple as just exploring the data in new ways, but it quickly moves into predicting what's likely to happen next or finding weird anomalies in the data. This is where you hear terms like machine learning and deep learning. It's all about creating a hypothesis, a smart guess, and then using data to test it and find the answers to those really complex what-if questions.
So as you've probably figured out by now, this isn't a one-person show. Not even close. It's a true team effort, a whole collaborative journey to get from raw data to a real insight.
So let's just run through that whole journey one more time. First, the data engineer gets the raw data in the door. Then, the analytics engineer comes in and gets it all cleaned up and ready for use. Next, the data analyst takes that clean data and builds the story of what happened. The business analyst then translates that story into what we should do. And finally, the data scientist looks at everything we know to predict what might happen next. You see, each role hands the baton to the next. I love this quote. Telling a story with the data is a journey that usually doesn't start with you. It just sums it up perfectly, doesn't it? No matter where you are in this chain, you're building on the hard work of the person who came before you. It's all connected. So now that we've walked the whole process, from gathering those raw materials all the way to predicting the future, I have a question for you. Which part of that data journey sounds the most interesting to you? Where do you see yourself fitting in? Hello and welcome. Have you ever really stopped to wonder what a data analyst actually does all day? Well, we're going to walk through it step by step. I mean, if you've ever just looked at a massive spreadsheet and felt completely overwhelmed by this sea of numbers, you are definitely not alone. It can seriously look like a different language, right? But what if I told you there's a clear, straightforward process for turning all that chaos into real clarity? So, in this explainer, we are going to break down the 5 key steps that an analyst uses to transform that raw data into a genuinely powerful story. You ready? All right, let's get into it. Okay, so everything, and I mean everything, starts with step 1, preparing the data. I love this analogy. Think of it like a chef getting all their ingredients prepped before they even think about cooking. This first step, it's the foundation for literally everything that comes next. So what does prepare really mean here? Well, it's all about making sure the data you're working with is trustworthy and accurate. You just can't build a solid analysis on a shaky foundation, right? So this is the point where an analyst makes sure the information they have is solid. And this involves some really critical tasks. We're talking about correcting wrong or just plain inaccurate data, figuring out how to handle any missing information, maybe converting data to make it way more readable, and, this one is super important, making sure any private information stays private and secure. And the stakes here are incredibly high. This quote really says it all. Bad data leads to bad reports, people losing trust, and just bad business decisions. Getting this first step right is absolutely vital. So you can see how all this hard work right at the beginning really pays off. When you have clean, well-prepared data, it makes the next step, which is modeling, so much easier. All right, so welcome to step 2, modeling the data. Our ingredients are all prepped and ready to go. Now it's time to figure out how they all fit together. This is where we start building the blueprint, the actual structure for all of our data. So what is data modeling? Honestly, it's kind of like building a family tree for your data. You're defining how all these different sets of information, we call them tables, are connected to each other. You're creating these relationships that show how, for instance, a customer table is related to a sales table. It's all about connection. And this is why a good model matters so much. A well-designed model, it's like a finely tuned, smooth-running machine. It gets you accurate reports, and it's fast. A poorly designed one, it's just the opposite. It's like a broken machine that spits out inaccurate results and becomes a total nightmare to maintain.
Okay, so our data is clean, our model is built, and now we get to the really fun, creative part of the whole journey. Step 3 is all about visualizing the story that's been hiding inside all those numbers.
And look, the goal here isn't just to make a bunch of pretty charts. The real point is to solve business problems by telling a compelling story with the data. A truly great visualization doesn't just show numbers. It guides a decision maker through the data, leading them straight to the key insights fast. So, what makes a great visualization? Well, there are a few key things. First, you have to tell a concise story. Sometimes throwing too much data on the screen just hides the important stuff. It's also about choosing the right kind of visual for the data you have, and, super important, designing it with accessibility in mind. Thinking about colors, fonts, and sizing so that everyone can easily understand it. Okay, so we've got these beautiful, clear visuals. Now what? Well, that brings us to step 4, analyzing for insights. This is where we kind of put on our detective hats and really start digging into what these visuals are telling us. Really, analysis is all about translating that visual story into insights you can actually do something with. It's where you dig deeper to understand the patterns, spot the trends, and maybe even start to predict what could happen next, all based on the information right in front of you. You can really break this whole analysis process down into 4 key actions. First, you're hunting for those aha moments, those key insights. Second, you're identifying the bigger patterns and trends. Third, you try to predict future outcomes. And fourth, and this is crucial, you have to communicate all those insights clearly so that everybody gets it. So, we've found our amazing insights, but the job's not over yet. Nope. There's one final, really crucial step. Step 5, manage and share. This is all about making sure all that hard work actually gets to the right people, and that it gets there securely and efficiently. So what does manage mean here? It's basically overseeing all of the stuff that's been created, the reports, the dashboards, all of it. The analyst is responsible for sharing this content, but also for making sure it's secure. You want the right people to see it, and you definitely want to make sure the wrong people can't. And the goals for this step are so important for any company. Good management helps teams work together better, it stops sensitive data from leaking out, and it cuts down on problems like having multiple copies of the same data, which just creates confusion. It's really about making the whole system work like it's supposed to. And there you have it. From that initial prep work of cleaning the data, to modeling its structure, then visualizing the story, analyzing it for those deep insights, and finally, managing and sharing the results. Those 5 steps, that's the complete journey for turning a pile of raw data into something truly valuable. So now that we've walked through the whole process, I've got a question for you to think about. From preparing the data all the way to visualizing the story, which of these 5 steps sounds the most interesting to you? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me. Hello and welcome. Ready for a quick challenge? We're going to go through 3 key ideas in data analysis. And hey, there's no pressure here. It's just a great way to check in with what you already know and maybe build up some confidence. So let's dive in. Okay, so our first question is all about the different roles you'd find on a data team, trying to figure out who does what. All right, first step. Which data role is the one that enables advanced analytics capabilities, specifically through things like reports and visualizations? Is it a data scientist, a data engineer, or a data analyst? Go ahead and think about that for a second. We'll pause right here for you. And the correct answer is data analyst. So how'd you do? Did you get that one right? Now, let's talk about why that's the right answer. It really comes down to this. A data analyst's whole job is to use the right visuals to help business leaders actually see what the data is saying and gain deep, meaningful insights. They're the ones who build that bridge between raw data and a smart, actionable strategy. All right, great start. Let's move on to our second question. This one really zeroes in on something that has a massive impact on performance. Okay, so which data analyst task has a critical performance impact on reporting and data analysis? Your options are model,
Analyze or visualize? Think about it. Which one of these is really the foundation that makes everything else run smoothly? I'll give you a moment to decide. Okay, time's up. The correct answer here is model. Now, I know this one can be a little tricky, but it's just so important. And here's why. A well-built data model is pretty much the engine behind everything else. As it says right here, an optimized and tuned semantic model performs better and provides a better data analysis experience. You can think of it like this. If your model is slow or just not structured well, it doesn't matter how fancy your visualizations are, they won't fix it. A great model is truly the key to high performance. Okay, let's move on to our third and final question. This one is really about the big picture, the ultimate goal of all this work. Which one of these is the most important? The key benefit of data analysis? Is it about creating decisive analytics, enabling informed business decisions, or building complex reports? What's the real why behind it all? Take your final moment to think. And the answer is informed business decisions. Hopefully you got this one. It really gets right to the heart of why data analysis is just so valuable. Yeah, the main goal isn't just to make cool charts or find patterns just for the sake of it. It's all about using those insights you get from a business's data to make timely and optimal business decisions. Really, everything an analyst does should point right to that outcome. And that's it for our little quiz. You did great. And hey, whether you got all three or are just learning, you've definitely strengthened your understanding. Let's do a super quick recap of the key takeaways from our challenge. So, let's bring it all together. First, we've got the analyst's role. They are the storytellers, the ones using visuals to create those meaningful insights for decision makers. Second, we talked about the model's impact. A strong, optimized model is absolutely critical for high-performance analysis. It's the engine room of the whole operation. And finally, the ultimate goal. All of this hard work is to enable smarter, informed business decisions. So how are you feeling? I really hope you're feeling a bit more confident about these core concepts. The real question now is, what are you going to analyze next? Thanks for joining me. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.